Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is another AMA Detroit webinar, and in honor of Women Histories Month, we thought that we have a webinar that talked about marketing, talked about business from the female's perspective. And since we are led by some great professionals in this area, we thought that we keep this one in-house and have a few of our board members create a panel and discuss some marketing topics in their careers and their experiences as women. So what I'm going to do first, thank you for joining. Also, if you are not a member, please check out our website, amadetroit.org. That's going to give you more information on memberships, on events, as we start to navigate this post-COVID world and hopefully do more in-person events, but also the resources that we offer. It's a great organization to be a part of, and a great group of people to network with and also to just grow with professionally. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to President-elect Christina Strong Reagan, and she's going to take it from there. So Christina, I'm going to make you the host, and we can take it from there.
Thanks so much, Chris. So welcome, everyone. My name is Christina Strong Reagan. I am the marketing manager at JS Clark Agency, an Assure Partners company, focusing on B2B marketing. I'm also president-elect of AMA Detroit, and I'm super excited to have Holly Shire and Amy White-Jones today here on the panel to talk about their career, their challenges, and provide advice for female marketers. We'll be discussing all types of different things. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. We'd love to share them with the panelists and get their feedback. But before we jump into the topics for today, I just want to share a little bit about their professional backgrounds. So Amy White-Jones is a senior brand and marketing strategist with over 2 decades as a strong business developer, specializing in strategic marketing, planning, and execution. Currently, she oversees internal and external marketing communication at Woodside Bible Church and its 14 campuses within Southeast Michigan. Previously, she was responsible for sales growth and marketing strategy execution under the Tim Hortons and Burger King brands. Before working for RBI, BK, and Tim Hortons, she held a senior marketing position for Wireless Vision, the largest partner for T-Mobile in the US, as well as leading branding and franchise location growth at Regis Corporation. She was responsible for all decision-making, including strategy, branding, media development, including digital, as well as rebranding launch of both brands. Amy is also currently president for the American Marketing Association in the Greater Detroit region. Leading and partnering with the current board, she oversees strategic planning, programming, communication, outreach for the Greater Detroit area in all areas of marketing. Amy, if you want to give a little wave to the audience.
Hello.
And our other panelist is Holly Shire. She is a principal and chief marketing officer for Raymond, the 33rd largest accounting and advisory firm in the US. Holly has collaborated with leadership to skillfully craft and execute marketing strategies for the past 25 years. She currently leads a talented team focused on brand management and go-to-market strategies that propel growth. She is the 2019 recipient of the Association for Accounting Marketing's Marketer of the Year Award and has gained tremendous insight into the accounting industry, having worked for 2 other top 20 accounting firms. For the last 10 years, she's been involved in women's career advocacy, has an active committee member for Raymond's Women's Initiative, as well as her prior firm. Holly is a past president of AMA Detroit and still serves on the board. Holly, give a wave to the audience. Awesome.
Virtual world audience.
Yes. Well, awesome. It's so great to have you guys on this panel today. So we're just going to go ahead and just dive right in. So can you both just kind of share a little about your career path? What have been some of your barriers and how did you overcome those?
Holly, you want to go first?
Sure. So out of college, I worked for several years at an accounting firm. I moved to LA for a brief stint with a startup magazine, and then I moved to Chicago for several years. I finally found a job at an agency that I loved, but the recession that hit in 2001 hit the company and they eventually went out of business. So I was laid off. I did finally find something in professional services, and I worked for a woman that was just an extreme powerhouse. She used to work for Deloitte, and she was wicked smart, and she kind of gave me a thank you card along the way that I still have. This is probably over 20 years old, and her words were so motivating, and I really learned the power of that written thank you. So after a while, I kind of felt the tug to come back to Michigan, and I decided to go back into accounting marketing because I wanted to have an industry that was more stable. So people always need accountants in the recession, perhaps more. And we're feeling that now. So I love doing all facets of marketing, including like operations and strategy and PR. And I'd gone to school at MSU for advertising. So it was exactly in line with what I wanted to do. So my barriers being in the accounting industry were persuading a primarily male dominated leadership group that I had the knowledge and skills to drive marketing. So I always had to paint a picture of what's the vision? How am I going to accomplish it? I had to convince others and bring them along in the journey. So probably to overcome that, my greatest challenge was, or opportunity really, was to be available. I volunteered for all projects, even those that were outside of marketing. And it kind of stemmed from the knowledge that if I could make myself available, I'd learn everything about the company. And I gained a reputation as someone who just wanted to pitch in. I could envision a plan, I could achieve the goal, I could help them get around barriers, I could work interdepartmentally. And it earned me a spot at a lot of seats at a lot of different tables. And so when it came time for me to push my marketing initiatives through that I knew would make a difference for the firm, I had the support of leadership and their trust. So that was probably my biggest barrier in how I was able to overcome all of them by just making myself available to become almost like invaluable, I guess you could say.
So I would say a little bit similar in the latter part of what Holly was saying. But for me, when I graduated from Central Michigan, I actually graduated with a degree in child development and minored in business. I wanted to open up my own daycare centers from a business. I come from an entrepreneurial family. So that was an aspiration that I had, loved business and loved kids, didn't necessarily want to be in teaching school, but wanted to be in the business aspect of it. Well, I got married, and after I got married, found out pretty quickly that I was pregnant with my first son. So my husband and I at the time made the decision that to stay home. One of the skills I did have was a professional figure skater. So I decided making that decision to stay home was tough, right? Because you go to college and you figure, gosh, I have this degree and the dreams that I really wanted. But at the time, we felt that was the most important decision for our family. And so with that, I did teach some figure skating, and I also started a home business, a marketing business. So even though I was stay-at-home mom and raising my kids for 12 years, I kept my skills up, right? So knowing that one day I would probably, enter back into a career. It wasn't until my youngest was in kindergarten that I decided, okay, I'm ready to step back into corporate. And what I realized very quickly is that this was a big barrier for me. Even though I had the skills and I had the degree and I had been keeping up with stuff, I realized that I was a little bit overqualified for the positions that I was applying to, but had to start somewhere. I basically kind of had to start at the bottom. And but what I realized is when I got in there, I'm like, I'm not going to stay here for long. So like Holly, I looked for opportunities that weren't necessarily marketing. It was in sales, it was operations, it was creating training manuals, whatever I could do to take those skills to show the value that I had. And I was really grateful for the CEO that hired me in a franchise company. That's where I started in franchising and realized how much I love franchising. And it was similar to helping, not maybe I couldn't have my own business at the time, but being able to help other people own their own business. And so from that's how my whole career, just by going, you know what? Okay, I'm going to jump in, start out in a call center as a call center agent, right? But that launched me into finding opportunities at the company and moving through my career to where I am today.
So Amy, we're going to start with you, and then Holly, want to follow up after. Who have been your allies and how have they supported you?
I would say my allies is one of my very first bosses. She's still my friend today. She is a business owner. And like Holly had said, she was really great at being very personalized, sending me personalized cards and words of encouragement, finding opportunities to compliment. But I think finding a mentor for me, somebody in the business world, having a male and a female, the very first company I started, he was a great mentor. He taught me a lot about, coaching me along, right? And I think for me, being open to the constructive, I wouldn't say necessarily like constructive criticism, but the constructive feedback that I needed, right? So some of it was like, hey, this was back, 15 years ago, but when you send emails, I know you're pretty aggressive, but like start out with, hey, hi, how are you? How's the weather? How's your, whatever. So it was being open to that constructive feedback that was so important. And so I think it's really important to have someone that you can trust that's in the business world. And then also having, my best friend and my husband was important too, just from the other side of it. So not a big ton of insight there, but that's just my story.
Amy, it's funny because I'm thinking about this webinar. One of the books that I love, Radical Candor, actually happens to be sitting right there, talks about just that radical candor that you need, and that individual that they have to be able to tell you, you're saying too much, you're flicking your pen too much, you're, those things that make you look like you're not paying attention, or and when you are, it's maybe just a nervous habit, so that someone who can be radically candid with you. So I do feel that I've had, those in my life too that are so important. But
yeah, I would agree.
So I was fortunate early on to kind of gain the favor of some awesome male and female role models. Amy, to your point too, I think role models can be male, as well, and we need them in our careers and in female careers, because if they do offer a different perspective. But those allies came with hard work. So as I went through my career, allies developed kind of naturally, because my goal was always to help others succeed, especially other women. So strong, successful women recognize their allies and they intentionally develop their networks. And women need those ambassadors. A man or a woman will advocate, someone who will advocate for them, who will introduce me to new opportunities, help me navigate waters, encourage me to be great, all of that. So, so I supported all of my female counterparts instead of looking at them as competition, and it really created some tight bonds and some really good allies.
Awesome. And it's actually great hearing you guys' stories. And it made me think of, for me personally, I love you guys that you jumped right into different areas, just do whatever you could do. For me, it was always just sharing any ideas where I can make something more efficient, more effective, more budget friendly, not being afraid to take those ideas to whoever's in charge and say, hey, look, I've got this great idea. I think this is going to work, and here's why, and providing the evidence and the support to say, this is what we should do. And then being like, wow, we didn't even think about that. That's a great idea, right? It's just having the courage to walk into the office and say, hey, look, I think I have something you should listen to. And that can be nerve-wracking. So having that ability to like psych yourself into, I can do this, I got this, I think can help you go a long way as well. So we're going to just switch gears just a little bit. And we're going to, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have been since last year. It's taken a toll on everyone. And just some stats that I want to share with the audience. So according to the 2020 Women in the Workplace study that was conducted by McKinsey, a management consulting firm, and leanin.org, women are more likely to have been laid off or furloughed during the COVID-19 crisis, stalling their careers and jeopardizing their financial security. More than 1 in 4 women are contemplating what many would have considered unthinkable just a few months ago, which is downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce completely. And then companies are also at risk of losing women in leadership, which can unwind years of progress toward gender diversity. So the next questions are going to follow. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we've all been kind of living with and experiencing over the last almost year and a half now. So during this pandemic, some people have experienced what they call blessings and others disappointments. I think we can all agree it's been challenging, but how have you managed to stay motivated and move forward professionally in the midst of so much uncertainty? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'll start with that. When you asked that question, or when I was thinking about that question, a lot of stuff kind of came to mind. In the current role that I'm in, our biggest day of the week is Sundays, obviously with church. So being in person, yes, we did have an online piece of that, but we had to completely shift our entire team to completely everything online and digital. And so while we were poised for doing that, it did create some challenges. And I think one of the challenges for me was I'm a very relationship person. So I would meet with a lot of teams in person and we would have a lot of events and a lot of programs and a lot of things that we were doing. And I was the lead for, basically creating a marketing plan, a promotional plan of how we were going to, not just Sunday, but all the other things that we were doing. And that all stopped, right? So none of that was happening. So what I looked at is like, okay, I'm always a very optimistic, positive person. Where can I provide value to our team, right? Like, where is it that I can look for the opportunity and be willing to adjust my job to what needed to happen? Maybe I didn't necessarily like being the email person, going into MailChimp, creating the emails, uploading the list, like doing all of the mundane tasks that other people might be doing because their job had to shift to something else. So I think having a really good attitude and knowing that, hey, this may be temporary, but you know what I gained out of it? I learned a whole new appreciation and really honed in on my email skills, read up on it, educated myself, and became more proficient and found better ways for us to be able to do things for automation, for a lot of different things. So it was actually a blessing in disguise, even though it was like, oh, here we go again. I'm punching the keys and I feel like, this isn't really, what I really want to do, but it was really a blessing in disguise. So that's just
that education or constantly educating yourself, it's certainly enough to keep you motivated because you're focusing on, something else and bettering yourself. To stay motivated, I learned something really quickly that stuck with me in the book Lean In, actually, Christina, you just mentioned, which is what made me think of it, which is a book I highly recommend to everyone listening if you haven't read it. But basically, they did a study on why men are promoted over women. And and what they found was that women do everything. They have hundreds of tasks all day long. They manage different things. They're constantly checking things off their checklist. And then when their male counterpart gets promoted, they're like, why? He doesn't do half as much as what I do. And what they found was that the men focus on the big boulders. What are those things that are really going to move the dial and those things that are going to have a lot of change and a lot of impact? And they let everything else either go, or they delegate it, or they communicate no better than women do, which tend to say yes to more things. And they were able to move the dial. So when it came time for promotion, they were recognized as being leaders that could create change and make things happen. And that really helped me in the pandemic and kept me motivated because it helped me to stay focused on those big boulders that mattered most to the firm and not maybe sweat that smaller stuff. So driving revenue to keep our big ship afloat needed to be my top priority, to protect my team and everyone else at the firm, from being laid off or furloughed. So I immediately focused on what are the most important things to the firm. What was my understanding? What were those client pain points? And I shifted my entire team to focus on what would be important to help communicate to clients, how we could help them. And then as a result, of course, drive revenue. So marketing was seen by the firm as a partner. We pivoted just as quickly as everybody else and all the advisors to help our clients. But our goal was helping our advisors help the clients so that they could feel invaluable and they could understand how to reach out to clients and what those pain points were and how they could talk to our clients. So that was motivating because it felt like we were making a difference in everything that we were doing. And I think that motivated the team as well, to keep going.
Awesome. Amy, this next question is directed to you. After the pandemic is over, is there anything you see yourself doing differently in terms of your career or work-life relationships?
This may be a very boring answer, but not really. And the reason I say that is I feel like I have, being older and kind of living life a little bit and having a family, I've learned, a while ago to really have a work-life balance. And so I think if there's anything from the pandemic or that maybe I wouldn't do differently, but I would continue to do would be continue to refine and learn, like because of that email example that I gave you. Even though I know it fundamentally, it was good lesson for me to learn just to go, okay, you know what, we can, you can do other things too. And you don't have to, just stay in your sandbox. You can jump over and do other things, even though I know I can. It taught me a good lesson. But I think just, always looking for opportunities, it continued to reinforce me to make sure that I'm looking for opportunities, continue to provide value, continue to be nimble, to be able to jump into something else if I need to. It was just a good reminder for me that, because sometimes we get stuck in what we do and we love what we do. And in marketing, we know it's always changing, right? That's the one thing about marketing. There's no like silver bullet. If there was, we'd all be retired and living in a beach in Cancun, right? So it's always a moving target. So it was a good reminder.
And Holly, this question is directed for you. It's a common theme now among news outlets that since most people have moved to remote work, they're working even more and disconnecting less. How do you disconnect at the end of the day?
I would say I've been successful because I disconnect throughout the day, maybe not just at the end of the day. So some days I play tennis midday, or I tackle some small house projects so that I have time, for family at night. And then other days I work a really long day when I've got the time, and other days, a shorter day. So I focus on getting up super early, kind of taking advantage of some of that travel time. I've gotten up early, for myself, either to work out or whatever it is. And now I've just kind of shifted that to get up early to work so that I can get done and feel good about, the end of my day. I've probably certainly worked more, I can't lie, in these last 2 years than I probably have ever worked, but I've stayed focused on those things that energize me. So physical activity outdoors, reading, a plethora of zillion news or industry publications. But it's that ability to maybe have a little bit more control over disconnecting and reconnecting throughout the day that helps me feel like I have balance. I also communicate my boundaries. I put out of office on my calendar, even if it's midday for a couple hours, and I make commitments to others at the end of the day. So I will make meetings with my friend or my significant other to go walk at the end of the day, because it kind of forces me to step away, from the desk. And now it's just become a habit. I realize that I need those walks. They're refreshing and rejuvenating. So I think now I've kind of gained that habit of doing it myself and not letting work kind of take over, or I feel terrible.
Yeah, I love what you said about boundaries. I'm the same way. Like I have very after hours, I am off the clock. I'm not responding to emails. I'm not doing any work, because you have to take the time to separate yourself, or you're burnout. You don't have that chance to decompress. And there's always going to be a million things that have to be done personally, professionally. So I think for me personally, it's always important to schedule in that downtime, be it an hour after work, I'm going to take a walk or do something I like to do. I'm going to plan a whole Saturday just to do fun things, just making sure that, for self-care, you're scheduling that time to just get away from everything, because it can be very overwhelming and then you don't want to burn out. So I love what you said about that.
I like communicating it. I like that you say that you communicate it, because everybody on my team, they all have different schedules. I've got people that work late. They prefer to work late. And they have family things that they need to step away, maybe from 3 to 6 or 7, and then they're back online for a couple hours. But they communicate it, so I know when I can communicate with them, when I can't, and I encourage that, because I want them to have control over when they work and when they don't work. So I
would agree with Holly. I would agree. For me, a lot of it is, we have a place up north that has no Wi-Fi. There's not any Wi-Fi. There's not anything. So purposefully making those kinds of trips to where I can't really do any work, you know what I mean? Because I don't even have cell signal really. So I think forcing yourself, putting my phone on the counter at night, you know what I mean? Just leaving it there. I have to make myself do these things. So it's important.
All right, this question is for both of you, ladies. If you could go back to the beginning of your career, is there anything you would do differently?
I can start this one. I probably have 2 things. I'm the queen of, I have 2 ideas or 3 ideas, but 2 things immediately come to mind. So when I was new to a company, I would have focused more on developing relationships with people I would need as my advocates. Being a heads down powerhouse worker is great, but the relationships are needed. They'll help you be thought of, kind of first when opportunities arise, or you'll more quickly be given benefit of the doubt if your life outside of the work starts to cause less focus on work. I had a divorce in the middle of my career that took me away from work mentally sometimes. And I learned after the fact, that being open and having advocates would have helped me maybe reach out more easily when I needed help or I needed that grace. And then second, I would say bring ideas. Christina, you mentioned this just a couple minutes ago. I bring ideas and initiatives to every conversation. If you're going to attend a meeting, provide value, be seen, get noticed, lean in. There's that book again, but I think that's very helpful. We all have different perspectives and we all bring great value to every conversation. So I probably would have leaned in a little bit more and had opened my voice, I guess, a little sooner in my career, knowing what I know now.
Yeah, I think for me, if I could go back and do anything different, I was in a pretty male-dominated industry in franchising, specifically in a brand that was a male salon, like a lot of franchisees and a lot of those kinds of things. And kind of being at home and then jumping back into career and learning things, I had a lot of skills and talents, and there were times where not the self-doubt, but being more confident in like the suggestions and the things that I would recommend or that I would propose, right? And I didn't always have to feel like, sometimes as a woman, I think, and not that I'm this way, but sometimes I think there were times where it's like, geez, I got to like act more like a guy. You know what I mean? Like to fit in or for them to take me seriously. And what I learned throughout my career as I got older and stuff, it's like, no, I don't have to be that way. I just have to be myself and be confident. And, I always back my stuff up with, I learned to have data, right? Like to have things, if I'm going to present something, get a business plan together and put it together, right? So I think, what Holly was saying, I think those are probably the couple of things that I would have potentially done differently.
So for both of you guys, what's the best career advice someone has ever given you?
I'm really curious to hear both your answers for this.
Okay.
I would say mine were, I had my current supervisor, actually, she told me to swallow the frog. And it's just meaning, get the hard stuff out of the way, be radically candid. And I think it's helped me be a better leader, a more honest leader, and also kind of creating that fear-free learning environment, because encourage that candor from anybody. But then also was find help. So someone told me once that if you can afford someone to mow the lawn, clean your house, organize your closets, whatever it is, and then research your benefits at work. Like we have a service that will help us do anything pretty much. So if I need a tree trimming company that will work around power lines, they'll find it. So it helps with your sanity and helps you kind of find that balance. And I know that, some of those paid services are not always options, but whatever you can cut out of your fund money, I guess, to create some of those services that will provide you sanity, that find help was a big advice too.
Well, mine's a little different, and I'm going to be a little raw and honest. I might come to Jesus moment here, but the best advice someone gave me is I'm a very direct person. So like, you don't have to wonder what I'm thinking. And so the best advice I have is, again, this franchise company, he pulled me aside. We were driving down to Columbus and he's like, I know you're always open to constructive feedback. He's like, I love your work ethic and like, you just are all in and you're ready to go. He goes, but just remember, on the way of getting there, you've knocked down 3 people behind you. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, slow down a little bit, listen to what other people have to say, because not everybody's at your pace, And so this was 12, 15 years ago. And I was like, oh, that really stuck with me. And so that was really hard to learn. I'm not going to say it happened overnight, but it helped me professionally and it helped me relationally as well. So just some good advice.
So I'm going to answer your question, Holly. I'm going to go ahead and share my best piece of career advice. Don't take yourself out of the game before you've even gotten in it. So basically, don't ever assume that a position or an opportunity is beyond what you can do. Take the opportunity and figure out how to do it. And so that's my philosophy. It's like, if it's something I want to do, I'm going to say, I'll figure it out. I believe that I can do it, and I go for it. So that would be like the best career advice I think I've ever received.
There's a Hewlett Packard study that I keep going back to this Lehman book since you mentioned it, but the study was basically the fact that women tend to not apply for jobs, and that could be opportunities too, unless they feel they have 100% of the qualifications, where men will apply for jobs if they have 60% of the qualifications. So it really, just goes to show that you probably are more qualified than you think. So don't doubt yourself and just do it. So that you totally reminded me of that. That's super advice.
Well, and to your point, like who really, like every job I've been, there's things that I haven't known that I didn't know, right? It's not like I'm telling them in the interview, oh yeah, I don't know that. I'm like, oh yeah, I've had exposure to that. And I'm like, and I'm going to behind the scenes figure out, right? Like if I got to call somebody or research it, I'll figure out how to get it done. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, Christina. That's really insightful.
So let's talk about the opposite of that. What's the worst career advice you've ever been given?
Amy?
I don't know. I feel like mine are so basic and just like, really? But this is the only thing I can think of. There was a company I was working for, and it was like, if you want to fit in with all of us, like when we go on travel, like we whoop it up and party, right? And so I'm just not that kind of a person. I don't mind having, a drink or two, but I have a limit. Like I always say, like if you're out on business, you got to, know like what your limit is, or you could end up getting fired from your job accidentally, right? So, if that was just something someone told me, it was like, yeah, if you want to fit in, if you want to be part of the guys, like, because you're the female, then you need to participate in this stuff. And so to me, it was like, yeah, no, I know who I am and I don't need to participate in that in order to be able to fit in and to provide value. So that was really bad. And this was from a boss. And so that was really bad advice, in my opinion.
Mine was kind of something similar, because I don't know that I've ever really received bad advice. Maybe if I have, I just immediately forgot it.
Yeah.
But it really was more around, sometimes people will tell you, who you need to get to know, or who's on your side, or who you should believe, and I tend to not, take it all in as kind of research, but always at the end of the day, it's, I look at it through my own lens and make sure that I agree with it. So I have received some bad advice on maybe who were my advocates, or who was on my, if there was maybe a project or something that we were debating which way we should go, and I hear, so-and-so, you got these votes, you're good to go, you let your guard down, and then next thing you know, people are voting the other direction. And so I maybe have just like ignored some of, maybe ignore the bad advice,
be your own person. I mean, just, you knew intuitively like what needed to happen and what was good advice and bad advice.
Yeah, I would say I've never necessarily had, I think, like you said, Holly, really bad advice. If I did, maybe I just like filtered it out and said I'm never going to pay attention to that and forgot about it. But I will say I've had, I guess, interesting interactions over the years with different people and how they perceive things. And you really got to keep your head down and be about your own business and stop worrying about what other people are doing, and focus on make sure you succeed, and other people, they get it, great. They don't, oh well. And for me personally, I love helping other people succeed. When someone gets where they want to go, it just brings me such like joy to be able to help other women, other gentlemen as well, anybody and everybody just like get where they want to go. I've had interns who have worked under me. I helped them, put together their resume, figure out what they really wanted to say, get their first job, get, into the Peace Corps, all these things that they were trying to accomplish. People who professionally, they have something, they're trying to connect with someone. Let me see if I know someone, in this industry, or maybe I can point you in the right direction, or can you look at my resume? Had a gentleman at my current job actually who was a friend of my boss, and asked if I could look at his resume. He was an older gentleman just trying to get back into the workforce, and he hadn't had any calls. And so I'm not a resume person per se, but I can give you some insights from if I was hiring, what I would be looking for. And he called me back 2 days later and said, "Thank you so much. I just want to let you know that I got like 2 interviews this week." And I was like, that's amazing.
Aw.
That's amazing.
That's
right?
great.
Yeah. So I just love it. I just love helping other people. So I wouldn't say it's the worst career advice, but I would say, like, for me personally, I just decided, no, I'm not gonna listen to that. I'm gonna continue to be Christina and help people along the way.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear, again, the chat, if anybody wants to chat their best advice too. So I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. If you have your own like experiences and advice you want to share, feel free to just throw it in the chat so everyone can see it. So for both of you, what changes do you see or would you like to see in the professional world that are benefiting women? And Amy, if you want to go ahead and start this one off.
Yeah, this one I had to like think about this, like, because there was a lot of different directions I thought that that I could how I could answer this, but I think with you know, women in leadership, I always say we bring a different perspective, right? So, and I use this example of a brand that I was on, which was a men's grooming service, right? So, was the marketing lead for that. Was able to be at the table and to provide some insight to going, okay, listen, like, if we're going to market, right, to, they're saying, oh, men, we got to get men, we got to get men here. I'm like, well, wait a second here. Like, it's actually, women are like the CFO of their homes, right? Like I joke around about that, but we're the ones that are like, we take the kids, we're making decisions where they're going to go to the doctors, where they're going to get their haircut, buying the groceries. I'm not saying that for everybody. I'm just saying in general, that's just kind of like, we kind of run the show of our house, right? And we're telling our husbands, oh, you have to go to this place because I got this advertisement. You know, a lot of times I said, we need to market to women, right? And so to me, I think how it's benefiting women or changes is like having a seat at the table with men was provided a different insight, right, into how we market. It's also another commercial. If you remember a long time ago, it was, I don't know if it was the Chrysler minivan or Pacifica, but it was the mom and she's shopping and it had they were promoting the Stow and Go, right? And she stuffed all of her packages down in there and she drives up the driveway. The husband's like trying to look in the back seat to see like, where did she go? What did she buy? Right. And so I think like having a woman's perspective on things is great from a marketing standpoint, which then in turn provides opportunities for sales, growth of your business. And so I think it's great having women in senior leadership to be able to give a different view of from a woman's perspective that helps companies grow. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's obviously there's always a different perspective. So I like that, you're kind of, don't ignore the gender, see it, how can women bring maybe some unique traits or perspective, it's something different to the table and different strengths that we innately have in running our households. But I would like to see continued investment in research to understand why women leadership decline at the manager level and what companies can do to reverse it. With the pandemic, stress and burnout and balancing needs at home, as well as women that are, quickly finding themselves in that sandwich generation with their parents, taking care of their parents and then their kids. So I would like to see companies do more with allowing sabbaticals or pauses in careers, maybe where needed to balance life, or provide programs for personal lives, not just work. Because during the pandemic, I mean, my heart hurt for those on my team that had children that I knew were trying to balance. And I didn't know how to help them other than to give them 100% flexibility, when they could work. So I'd like companies to kind of continue to develop those resources to help women balance those home obligations, whatever they are. Because many articles will talk about adjusting expectations for job performance. But honestly, my own experience showed me that my team excelled. So I personally wouldn't want anyone to lessen expectations of me, but give me resources to help me instead.
I would agree with that's a really good point, Holly, being a mom and, my kids are a little bit older, but I just saw how difficult it was, right? And being where I work now, there was so much flexibility, right? And being a woman and being a mom and having a career, it's a lot. It's a lot, especially if you've got little ones at home. It's even more hands on deck. And so to your point, I would like to see companies being able to be more flexible, having that hybrid model of listen, we can get our work done. Does it have to be between 9 to 5 every single day? You know, so it's a really good point.
Yeah, I just want to let the audience know if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and start dropping those in the Q&A box. We will get to those in a few minutes. But I guess our last question of the day is, what advice do you have for the next generation of female marketers?
I feel the common theme that we've been saying, all of us, is like staying true to who you are, right? Like I've heard that through Holly and Christina, is like really being true to who you are, and not, you don't always have to like know everything, right? Like to be able to jump into a position or what have you. You know, you have God-given talents, and that you know, come from your place of strength. One of the really good books that I read, that I did, which I'm sure a lot of you probably have, is called Strength Finders. And that was really pivotal for me to really find out what my true strengths were, because I would jump into positions and thinking, okay, well, I got to do this. Well, I have to do this. Well, why can't I figure this out? And when I found out that my top 3 was strategy, relationships, and positivity, I was like, okay, I need to be in a position of strategy, because that's just where I naturally excel. So my advice to women is to find out what your strengths are. A lot of times what happens is we have these, they're not weaknesses, they're just not our strength, right? And we're trying to cram a 75% of this job that goes to our weaknesses, when we're not looking for opportunities that are really our strengths. But if you don't know your strengths, sometimes you can feel like you're just circling the drain a lot. So that would be my biggest advice. Get that book. It's like $10. You take the test, you can read it, and you can really figure out like what you're really good at as a marketer. Because in marketing, we know there's so many different directions that you can go, which is great, but it can also be like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have to know every single thing about every single one of them and be good at all of it, you know? So that's my biggest advice.
So I love all the Myers-Briggs, DISC, all the profiles. And but I love what you said, because I loved Strength Finders. And what you said was exactly the reason why. It didn't really click with me until you said that you need to listen to what you're hearing back as your personal strengths. And now I'm gonna have to look back, because I feel like mine like played into my current job, but now I'm curious.
Yeah.
So let's go look at
It's like, that, should I be in this job now?
Exactly. So I was thinking, you know, as I thought about this one, also kind of another theme, you know, that we've talked about was just lifting women up around you. We are not all competing for the same job. I think when I was younger, I thought we were. So if you have talent, a company will make room for you. There's, you know, you always hear that there's a talent war out there. And my feeling is you'll advance your career faster by lifting others up, and consequently being seen as that leader, versus trying to beat the perceived competition and making enemies. So I'd say create allies, not enemies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was going to say, just to follow up on that, if I had to give advice for the next generation, I would say never stop learning. And in particular, if you do feel a little fearful or uncertain of a position or something you want to go into, there's tons of resources available now. Luckily, we live in a day and age where you can go online and find a course about anything, an ebook about anything, a person who's posting about it on Facebook and Twitter and blogs and all these different things, who are doing exactly what you want to be doing, right? So you have the opportunity to learn from so many different people. So even if you feel a little uncertain, just know that you have the opportunity to get into the role. And the best way, me personally, I think, is to learn by doing. So take the role and then just start learning and use what you learn online and apply it in your day to day, and you'll be just fine.
I totally agree. Google's out there.
Exactly.
And Whitney, glad to hear you say the flex schedules, you know, and the eliminated commute helped you. I think that was the answer that I heard a lot from folks I work with too.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up to audience questions. I see we do have a few in the Q&A box here, so feel free to just put those questions or any advice or any thoughts you have in the chat. So our first question is, how do you deal with self-doubt?
Well, kind of going along with what you just said, Christina, that self-doubt, I am a lifelong learner. I love learning new things. I picked up guitar at 40. I played tennis in my late 30s or picked it up. So I relinquished that fear of looking dumb a long time ago. And, everyone at some point doesn't know how to do something. Now we have the advantage of Google. So somewhere somebody tried it and, you can learn from them and maybe, get rid of that fear of looking ridiculous a little bit. So the more you throw yourself into those challenges, the more your brains start to learn quickly, how to analyze, how to pivot, how to try new things and keep moving. So, you read all those articles on imposter syndrome and basically just feeling like you're never good enough in a job. And, I feel that way every single day. Like I'm sure a lot of us do, but, every day brings a new challenge and that you've never done before. So my feeling is, give it your best shot. I mean, the worst that could happen is you learn something. So, and I praise my team, to do the same thing. I want them to feel free to, want it to be like a fear-free zone, I guess you could say, that I want them to try new things without fear of bad missteps. It happened to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Holly. Mine's maybe a little, maybe non-traditional, where I, being my faith in God, that's where I really, my identity's at. And so when I struggle sometimes, I lean on, if I'm struggling in, with like my career choice or what I'm doing, I just pray about it. And, I know God has me, he's given me the gifts and talents and he's placed me where he's placed me for a purpose. And, so, sometimes when things like, like Holly's saying, where it's like, gosh, I don't know, whatever, I just step back and go, okay, you know what, like I'm here for a reason. There's a reason I'm here. And I have to continue to learn, like there's always a saying, like, pray like it depends on God, but work like it depends on you. You know what I mean? So it's like, I have to also do the work as well, to educate myself, to continue my education, as Holly had said, right? And to learn new things. So.
Right. And this next question is, what advice do you have for women trying to figure out where they want to go in their careers? And actually, I'm just going to start off a little bit with that particular piece or that question with the answer. Always join or think about joining professional associations or organizations, some like AMA Detroit, or when I was in working in Michigan, I was part of the Central Michigan Public Relations Society of America. I've attended Boss Ladies referral crew events and things of that nature, because you get to meet so many different people doing so many different things. And then you can kind of talk to them and say, what do you like about what you're doing? And what do you not like about what you're doing? And how did you get there? And what was the struggle that you had to face to get there? And what should I do if I want to get there? I remember the CEO of the Michigan State University Federal Credit Union. She had did a guest presentation at one of our CMPRSA events at the time. And she was like, hey, if you want to have coffee with me and, talk about things, just, send me a message. And so I said, okay. So I went on LinkedIn, I requested her and I sent her a message. I said, hey, you said if you want to have coffee and talk about things, send me a message. So I did, and we scheduled coffee. We had coffee at a coffee shop in downtown East Lansing. I was able to pick her brain about the CEO role and how she got there. And, I'm interested in the CEO position one day, and what would you recommend? And it was just really good conversation. I had one woman when I was at a Boss Ladies referral crew event. She was just getting into marketing herself, and she was a sole marketer, so office of one. And she asked me, can I have coffee with you? Because I would like to get some tips and insights about what is it like to be a marketing office of one? What should I be focusing on? What should I do? How can I balance my time, right? So just making those connections and like talking to other women and stuff will definitely help you figure out like where you want to go, if it's something you want to do. And maybe you find out this is not something I want to do, right? But just having those conversations, I think, can help go a long way. Amy, how do you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the networking piece is huge, right? Because sometimes you feel like you're on an island on your own a lot, even if you're in a company, right? Where as a marketing lead, like you're the lead, like who else do I have to talk to about this stuff, right? So I think that's important. Another, this may be a non-traditional, but sometimes I would take interviews of jobs, especially early on when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or what I wanted to go into. Maybe sometimes I didn't have like that advice, but I would go on different job interviews to find out, like, you can read the description, right? But a lot of times when you go in for an interview, it might be different. or you learn some insight and you're like, yeah, walk with it. That is not what I want to do. You know what I mean? I mean, there was one job I was in a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, me marketing this stuff is like, this just not my passion. It's just not what I really love. So if you don't love it, there's so many things to market. Find something you love, you know what I mean? That you really enjoy, like you can get behind and be passionate about marketing.
Yeah, agree with both of those. The only other thing I would add is scour LinkedIn. So I tell this to all high school and college graduates as well. Every time I'm asked to speak somewhere, like you can punch in marketing, as the degree, and you see all the cool things that people are doing with marketing. I mean, I didn't even know some careers existed and what people could do with certain degrees, because you think accounting, who wants to do accounting? But then now that I'm actually in the career and in the industry, I should say, and looking around at what others are doing to actually help our clients, I'm like, that's a cool career. I never would have even thought about it. So kind of looking at LinkedIn and see who has your same degree and what are they doing with it, to see how maybe you could shift your current degree to maybe do something else that you love that you didn't know existed before.
Yeah, I'm gonna say also, old school technique, right? Reach out and see if you can job shadow. I did that a few times in college. I'm like, can I just like follow you around for the day and kind of watch what you do? And
you'd be really bored following me around, Christina.
It was just nice. I want to follow both of you around. I want to see what both of you do for the day. But that was definitely helpful when I was like just like graduating and in college, to be able to see what people did in their day-to-day. Also, there's really no substitution for being able to really experience something yourself too. Okay, great. And then so the next question we have is, can Holly repeat the book she talked about earlier?
Yes, I had a couple. So Lean In is one of the first ones. Sheryl Sandberg, I think, wrote that one. So she had jobs at Facebook and a variety of other different, companies that you would recognize. But and then Radical Candor by Kim Scott is the other one. But both were really good. I would highly recommend both those books. They changed myself, and people I've recommended them to have actually followed back up with me to say, I'm so glad you had me read that book. So highly recommend those.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. This has been a great conversation, and I hope the audience walked away with some really good insights that they can apply. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Chris to go ahead and close this out. But I'm so happy I got to be here, and I'm so happy I got to moderate this panel. And please do check out AMA Detroit. I am going to put a plug in there, shameless little plug, but I'm going to put it in there. Go ahead and check it out. We'd love to hear from you, and any feedback on future webinar ideas or things you would love to see as marketers in our community.
Thank you, Christina. Thanks.
Ditto.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Holly. I really appreciate you guys giving your insight on this topic. I know I took a few things away from this as well. I just put Amy, Holly, and Christina's LinkedIn URLs in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you guys have any additional questions. If you want a job shadow, like Christina said, it might be a little bit difficult these days in COVID, but feel free to reach out and get some more information. Also, if you're interested in becoming a member with AMA Detroit, or if you're interested in some of our future events or just some of our resources, feel free to visit us at amadetroit.org. You're going to find a wealth of info on us and what we do in the community. With that, I will close it out, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.